The doll's arms stretched towards Tanjirou and Kotetsu as Kotetsu was helping Tanjirou up. The two boys were looking at the doll mouth agape. As the doll stepped closer, and knelt in front of them, they realized that the head of the doll was replaced with the grip of a sword. Tanjirou held up Kotetsu in a handstand above his head, screaming.
Something came out! Something came out! What is it?
Kotetsu screamed back.
Well, I have no idea either. What is it?
Walking up to the headless doll, the Tanjirou's eyes popped out as he realized.
It must be a 300-year-old blade or something.
Kotetsu nodded his agreement and responded.
Yeah, this is. Wow. So what now?
Both boys sat back on their haunches and stared at the doll, eyes wide, and panted more and more intensely. Both of their minds were running at maximum speed. Tanjirou couldn't take it anymore and finally screamed again.
I can't stop getting excited.
Kotetsu screamed back.
Yeah.
Pumping his hands in the air and smacking himself on his knees. Composing himself, Kotetsu took a deep breath, got up and took a few steps back. He bowed his head slightly and held his hands together in a motion like handing something to Tanjirou, saying,
Tanjirou, you can take it. Please take it.
Tanjirou started sweating and stammering with excitement and discomfort. He couldn't bring himself to take the gift, but he couldn't convince himself to decline firmly either.
No, I can't. The doll took years' worth of sword blows and it just happened to break when I used it.
The excitement of the situation overcame Tanjirou and Kotetsu. They couldn't stay still and began celebrating again. Tanjirou started spinning Kotetsu again as he continued speaking, trying to convince Tanjirou to take the sword.
Tanjirou, you were in trouble since your sword wasn't getting forged, right? Then go ahead. I own it, so I get the say.
His pride was swelling as well. But Tanjirou still tried to protest. He was excited and screamed back with a goofy smile.
No, you can't.
He wasn't very convincing, nor was he convinced. Kotetsu switched to using logic to try to persuade Tanjirou and responded.
Metal forged during the Sengoku era is of really good quality, take it.
Tanjirou couldn't keep his self-control up, and crumbled with excitement and trepidation. He stopped trying to protest. He was just too excited. He put Kotetsu down and with trembling stepped closer to the doll and squeaked.
Should I pull it out?
Kotetsu was not going to be subtle. He simply screamed in excitement.
Yeah, I want to see it.
The boys stepped up to the doll. Tanjirou extended his hands, gently and gingerly extracted the scabbard sword. They both knelt, with the sword in Tanjirou's hands, and Kotetsu balled his hands in excitement and reverence, looking at the sword in awe. With a gentle tug the sheath pulled away from the sword, revealing a rusted blade. Both the boys collapsed to the ground in disappointment with no hope of life left, exclaiming.
It's rusted.
Kotetsu recovered first. He realized that time damages things. He pushed himself up and said.
Well, it has been 300 years. And nobody got their hands on it. And nobody knew about it. Sorry for getting you worked up over nothing.
Tanjiro lifted his face, eyes full of tears, and nose full of snot. He lifted his hands, waved them, declining the apology. In a trembling voice he said.
It's okay, don't worry about it.
Kotetsu panicked at seeing Tanjiro's face and racked his brain for a way to comfort him. But he couldn't react or say anything else because both of them heard a crunching sound through the woods and felt an oppressive aura. Looking between the trees, they saw a looming muscular figure. As it approached, it was a hulking male body with the mask of Haganazuka. Tanjiro and Kotetsu grabbed each other and screamed in fear.
Wahahaha! Who? Haganazuka?
The hulking body of Haganazuka slowly strode forward and stopped a step away. Haganazuka loomed over the boys and menacingly exhaled.
I heard everything. Leave it to me.
Tanjiro screamed back.
Leave what to you?
Haganazuka didn't respond. He simply intensely stared at the boys cowering on the ground in front of them. Then out of nowhere Haganazuka slowly raised his hand and bent over towards the sword and grasped it. Tanjiro registered what he was doing and lunged at the sword to hold on to it. His bolt forward jolted Kotetsu out of his shock and fear. He jumped forward and grabbed the sword too. It was just in time because Haganazuka was unbothered by Tanjiro's interference. Haganazuka was way bigger than Tanjiro even after all his training. But even the malice and intimidation wasn't enough to stop Tanjiro from defending Kotetsu's sword. He had loyalty to his young mentor. A tug-of-war started. Pulling the sword with all his might, Tanjiro screamed.
Please let go. Wait, why are you even trying to take it?
Haganazuka calmly and menacingly said back in a flat tone.
Leave it to me.
Tanjiro didn't understand but was certain to not lose the sword. He responded.
No, this is Kotetsu's.
Haganazuka was unbothered by the efforts of the boys and repeated flatly.
Leave it.
Kotetsu was bothered by the actions and screamed as well.
Please explain, Haganazuka.
Haganazuka didn't. He just repeated calmly.
Leave it.
Kotetsu responded in frustration again.
No, leave what?
Haganazuka was done being nice. He started getting frustrated with the boys' interference. Haganazuka sighed and with a grunt, spun around screaming.
I'm telling you, leave it to me.
Tanjiro and Kotetsu held on for dear life, but couldn't stop Haganazuka. They flew off and Tanjiro screamed his disapproval at him.
What? That's not what adults should do.
All seemed lost. Haganazuka was victorious holding the sword and prepared to leave. Out of nowhere the chief of the village appeared and tickled Haganazuka saying,
Boys, Haganazuka weak point is his sides. Go for these parts.
His voice was sweet and pleasant, very similar to how he greeted Tanjiro when he first arrived in the swordsmith village. The assault on Haganazuka was very effective. He froze in place and started convulsing and giggling to the point that his mask started crying, but he refused to let go of the sword, even as he went to the ground. Tanjiro didn't let go of Kotetsu as he exclaimed.
Ah, Kanamori sir, it's been a while.
The chief stood triumphant over Haganazuka and responded waving a tiny hand.
Hello there Tanjiro.
Pointing to Haganazuka he added.
Haganazuka will just fall limp when you tickle him. So I'll do the explaining.
Bowing his head to Tanjiro, the chief said.
Please forgive the man. He was training in the mountains.
Tanjiro was shocked at this statement and let go of Kotetsu. Kotetsu started throwing stones at Haganazuka in anger. Tanjiro knelt in front of the chief to look at him eye to eye and tilted his head and asked.
Training?
The chief nodded and continued explaining.
Yeah. He wanted to make a strong sword, so you wouldn't die. He won't be honest about it though.
Tanjiro melted, as he raised his hands to his face. With tears in his eyes he said.
For me?
The chief looked away into the distance and added.
And you keep asking him to make blades for you. So I think he's happy.
Softly shaking his head he added with annoyance.
Every other swordsman hates him, and he's lost a lot of clients.
Tanjiro remembered all the things that Haganazuka put him through and the happiness and fuzzy feelings melted away, giving space to a feeling of dread and regret.
Oh really?
Kotetsu ran out of stones to throw at Haganazuka and added.
And he's really bad at dealing with people. That's why he's not married yet.
Out of nowhere Haganazuka jumped up from a lying position. The chief looked at him and said unbothered.
Ah. He's back.
Haganazuka landed nimbly on his feet and he waved his arms so fast in a way that made it look that he had 6 arms, saying.
I will deal with the rusted blade. Allow me to refine it with my Nichiren polishing skills that have been based down the Haganazuka line for generations.
Kotetsu huffed and said.
Then you could have just said that from the get-go. You keep saying, trust me. Trust me. Even though you don't try and establish the mutual trust. You just repeat that on and on.
In a flash, Haganazuka grabbed Kotetsu by the shirt and lifted him in the air. Tanjiro and the chief bolted forward screaming.
Sides. Sides.
Trying to tickle Haganazuka again to free the foul-mouthed child. Sitting in a room in the main house, Tanjiro was recapping the story of what happened since he came to the village while eating rice crackers with gusto.
So that happened yesterday, and I heard it will take 3 days and 3 nights.
After taking another bite of rice cracker, that's why the polishing will end the day after tomorrow. He said his methods are so severe that people have died from them. Gulping hard he added.
I'm kinda worried, but he also told me to not check on him ever.
Looking over at his conversation companion he asked.
But should I?
Genya's forehead veins were pulsing as he whirled around screaming.
I don't care. Get out, damn it. Don't talk to him back, Cody, like I'm your friend.
Tanjiro exclaimed hurt while reaching for another cookie.
But we are friends, right?
Genya yelled back in anger.
No, we are not, dumbass. You broke my goddamn arm. Don't tell me you forgot.
Tanjiro was bright-eyed and innocent as he said.
Hey, you hit a girl. I had to, Genya. You were completely at fault.
His voice was pleasant and unapologetic. Genya flared up even more. He was even more angry and he stepped closer to Tanjiro.
Don't call me by my first name.
Tanjiro acted as if he didn't notice Genya's anger. Extending his arm with a rice cracker he said.
These rice crackers are really good. Wanna try?
Genya swiped with force at the cracker, splitting it in half.
Jerk. I don't need that crap. Get out.
He was screaming with his mouth fully open at the top of his lungs. Tanjiro noticed that all his teeth were in his mouth. He was confused as he said.
Huh. Your teeth, didn't you pull them out, at the spring?
This broke Genya's brain and he froze and sat back away from Tanjiro. After several seconds of uncomfortable silence he looked away and said.
You must have been seeing things.
Tanjiro extended his open palm with a tooth and said.
No, I wasn't. I have your tooth here.
Genya whipped around and screamed.
Why did you take it? You're completely gross.
Tanjiro was confused at the outburst and responded.
But, I mean you dropped it and I wanted to give it back.
Genya interrupted and screamed.
You're insane. Throw it out. And get out.
As he was saying this he was kicking Tanjiro over and over again until he was out of the door. Tanjiro looked at the closing door and mumbled.
Why is he so mad all the time? Maybe he's hungry or something.